Going to live here. Okay. Hey guys, it's Andrew with Masters in E-commerce and Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, I guess, because I told you. Today we got a really special guest. We got Damon Burton on today, and dude, this guy is an awesome SEO person. He's got a firm called SEO National. Damon basically started off, it's really interesting. He turned from on-air DJ talent to SEO King, right? Which was it was interesting. He runs a company called SEO National that helps businesses around the world get better rankings in Google. Very ROI driven, focused, and helps his clients bring in millions of dollars in revenue through organic traffic. He's also been seen or helped. I'm going to figure out this, Damon, when we talk about this. But the Shark Tank helping
Yeah,
Spoonful of Comfort on there. He's done stuff with the Utah Jazz, which is really cool. I hope you got tickets. Deal Yard and Flirty Pro. So, and dude, if I missed anything, let me know.
sure, yeah, yeah. You know what's funny is you talked about the DJ thing. I had somebody come over the other day, an entrepreneur, and I was talking to them, and they said the same thing. They're like, "Hey, how did you go? I know DJ Damon, and then all of a sudden there's Internet Marketing Damon. Like, what happened in between?" So the abbreviated version is when you work on air, in between all the songs, you're just kind of sitting there, right? So the whole
Right.
time I was working on sites while I was on air. So that was my thing. Like
Nice.
I was doing the side hustle. It just wasn't very apparent to everybody else.
Yeah, well, that's cool. The sets must have been really, really awesome if you had time in between to like
Yeah, well,
do
well,
some SEO on the side.
radio's this whole other, it's this whole other thing that it's like all smoke and mirrors. It's way different
Right.
than the public thinks.
Doing other things. Cool. Awesome. So, what I thought we would talk about today is like how to rank content, because content, everybody needs content to get maximum SEO value, and I guess that's content is king, right? It's always been king, but how you do it, how you get it, how you figure out the right SEO, all that kind of stuff. Maybe we can go into that kind of stuff and chat about that. It would be awesome.
Yeah, so
And also,
content,
by the way, if anybody has questions, drop them in the comments there, and we'll get to them at the sort of end of our gig.
yeah, content is interesting because it's such a core part of SEO, and at face value, a lot of people think it's just content, it's just words, and it should be easy. And then you actually get down to it, and it's super hard. What do you write about, and how do you come up with a process where you write a lot, and how do you make sure it's structured well? So, what I did a couple of years ago, and what I've learned throughout, so I've been doing SEO, 11 years, and I've been in the web design world for almost 20 years. And so, really, in the last 5 or 6 years, I've just tried to drive everything to be process driven. And so when it comes to content, the problem we used to run into, and probably what a lot of listeners run into, is when we'd work with our clients, we'd say, okay, we need to do content, and we'd nudge our clients and say, write about something this week. And then they're like, well, we're busy doing our day-to-day stuff, so we don't have time. So then we said, okay, well, we'll write it. You tell us what to write about, and we'll write it. And then they're like, well, I don't have time to think about it. So then we said, all right, we need to come up with a process for this whole thing. And so what I've done and what is valuable for listeners is come up the way I approach content is to come up with a 52-week content calendar. After this goes live, I'll drop a comment and I'll post a template. I'll give you guys a template that I can use or that I use and you guys can use. And what I do
Great,
is
thanks.
I map out the whole year because what happens whether you're doing SEO or for a client is every week rolls around and you go, what do I write about? So what I do when I board a new client is I front load all the research. So for the first 2 to 4 weeks, we dive in and we look at the client, we look at their industry, their competitors, and we say, what do we want to write about? What do our potential leads and buyers want answered, and how can we be the answers for that? And we map it out into a 52-week content calendar. And
Hmm.
what's cool about that is once you've done all that research, then you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So then you can take and use that for your blog. Then you can repurpose that same topic for an infographic. You can use your blog, text as a script for a video. So if you just front load it, then
Right.
you can spin it into all sorts of content.
Yeah, because that is the I mean, I'm faced with that today, is getting content. Like, okay, all right, you got the week, you try and fit 2 weeks, you're like, okay, gotta get guests and all this kind of stuff. So it's really, really hard. I mean, and having something where you can kind of front load that thing, especially if you're not doing a daily thing, if you're just doing once a week, it's a lot easier. But if you're doing on a daily thing, there's just a ton of content that you need to do, right? So I find that's a struggle I sort of have on a daily basis.
Yeah. One cool site that's free is answerthepublic.com. And
Huh.
what
Okay.
Answer the Public is you can go there and you can type in, let's say I'll tell you about the Utah Jazz. You mentioned the Utah Jazz. So
Yeah.
when we started building out their content calendar, we would go, one of the resources we went to was Answer the Public. And so we type in, different players' names. So Donovan Mitchell is a really popular jazz player. And so we go there, you type in Donovan Mitchell, and it spits out this hub of words and phrases. So you got Donovan Mitchell in the middle, and then it goes, who, what, when, where, and why. And then that splinters out
Oh
even more
wow.
into why does he wear number 45? Who's his girlfriend? What's his Instagram? And so like these are the things that your clients like already want to know. And so then you can
Right.
build out your content calendar around that. And so when they search those things, you build out that content and you're the one that shows up to give them those answers.
Right. 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 That's awesome. Well, that's a huge thing. Answer the public. I had no idea that. It's kind of like almost like a word mind map in a sense, but it's just more on what's going on in the thing. That's awesome. And so that as you are creating this content, right, and you're building this stuff, and do you sort of fill it in with kind of keywords? You do keyword research on the content that you're kind of creating, or like or do you just write it and it just naturally filters up through Google?
Kind of a little bit of both. So yeah, all your content calendar before. So great question. Before you dive into building out your content calendar, you got to know what you're going to build that content around because it should serve a purpose. Your end goal is money, right? You want sales and
Right.
leads. And so you
Right.
build that content around the keywords that you can monetize. So first you have to
Mm.
figure that out. So where I start is similar process, do your research and go see what your competitors are targeting. And the reason why I like to look at competitors is because the phrase I always use is follow the money. Like if your competitors are throwing money at these keywords, then they've probably already, you can learn from their mistakes where they've burned and wasted money and look at what they're at now that should be driving a return for them. So if it's driving a return for them and you're in the same industry, then it should drive a return for you too. So
Right.
a good tool is spyfu.com, SPYFU, and that website you can go there and it'll look
Mhm.
at organic. You can type in a domain, it'll give you some of the keywords that show up on their radar for organic and also pay-per-click. Now, even though we're talking about the world of SEO, it's still good to look at pay-per-click words just because of that follow the money. They are directly
Right.
throwing money at those words. So look,
Right.
that's one resource. And then you can go and look at another website is openlinkprofiler.org. You can type in a
Okay.
website and it'll tell you once the site loads, there's a tab that'll say anchor text. And if you click on anchor text, what
Mm.
that is you can look for the keywords that other websites are placing in their content. And so you can get a feel for what the industry is talking about. So anyways,
Mm.
what you do is you kind of get a collection of those potential keywords. Then you can go run them through a tool like Google Keyword Planner. You can just Google that and it'll come up. And it'll tell you the search volume. Are people actually searching for these? Because you don't want to target something that doesn't have an audience. So first you qualify its relevancy, then you qualify its search volume to make sure there's an audience. And then from there, you kind of finalize your list and build your content around that list.
Hmm. Okay, so you build around that list. Okay, cool. And that's how you kind of build that. So and then brainstorming, I guess, is what you were talking about on that. So then on the SEO side of things, then do you just put that out? Do you then try and put that onto like guest posts or blogs? Like how do you sort of filter that to get more, I guess, juice with your content? Like what strategy do you kind of use on that side of things?
It depends on the industry. There's a lot of options. Some, if you're more of a mom and pop and you're in a very specific industry or in a small demographic area, maybe you're a dentist in a small town and don't have a lot of competition. Usually the content's good enough. Um, you're not battling as many people and as many variables to outrank. But then when you get into more
Right.
competitive space, then it becomes a popularity contest. So the more
Right.
times you have other websites referencing yours or linking to yours, or what's called citations when another website cites or mentions you, then it builds
Mm-hmm.
this buzz around your brand and your website. So you can go out on other websites and depending on the website, if it's a blog, then you can drop a comment and say, this is a great article. I wrote something similar. But for that particular tactic, I'll put a little asterisk. If you're going to go out and
Right.
start doing blog commenting, don't be the spammy guy that everybody hates and you're just like
Right.
dropping your link everywhere. Be
Right.
courteous and read. Well, first, find a blog that's relevant to whatever you're about to promote, and then
Right.
read that blog and contribute
Right.
to the conversation and
Mm-hmm.
be credible in your follow-up comment as well. So that's one option. A big tactic we've been pushing our clients to lately is called outreach, where it's just
Mm-hmm.
like it sounds. You reach out to other websites, and there's a lot of, you can just Google outreach software, and there's these tools that allow you to identify influencers or high profile websites in your industry. So, I'll
Mm-hmm.
roll with the dentist example again. You can type in dentist and it'll return a list of websites with different metrics you can look at. So, do they have a lot of Facebook followers? Do they have a high value website with all these SEO terminology metrics? And from
Right.
there, you can initiate an email exchange and a follow up sequence. And in that exchange, you say, hey, I noticed that you're a great resource for dentistry topics or whatever your industry is.
Right.
I wrote this great resource article. What do you think? Or would your audience find value in it? But you got to do the content first. You just can't do the shotgun approach
Right.
and spam your stuff out there. So you got to deliver the value first.
Right. So on the content side of things, so say you're not a great content writer, like what do you do? Like you've done the research, you've done the thing. Do you go to like Fiverr and find people, or do you go to Upwork, or like how do you find good content writers that can write good SEO content for, or at least good articles for
Sure.
you that are peppered with the research that you've already found?
A good website is iWriter, just the letter I, and then writer.com.
Okay.
So I usually answer that two ways. And so it depends on the volume of content you're going to produce. If you're
Right.
doing SEO for yourself and you're doing an article here and there, use iWriter. It's a la carte. It's on demand. When you need an article, you go there. The nice thing about
Mm,
iWriter is it's almost like an auction system. So you
mm,
say, I need an article, and then it needs to be approximately 500 words or 700 or 1,000. And then you can say, I want this to go to um, average writers, or I want to pay more for, I think it calls elite writers. And so
mm.
you kind of pay for the quality. And then when they write it, I mean, you're going to get, it's not going to be perfect. Even if you pay for the
Right.
top tier, you're going to have to polish it up a little bit. But,
Okay.
if it comes back and it's too far off, then you can either request a revision or you can decline it and it goes back into the writer pool and somebody else can take a stab at it. So
I see.
there's quality control measures in there so you're not just burning money.
Right.
Now, if you end up writing a lot of content or needing a lot of content and it's just not your thing, then I'd hire a VA, a virtual assistant. You can, same kind of thing. It's going to take a little trial and error finding the right VA to help you.
Sure.
But you can get somebody that'll crank out articles for you for a couple $100 a month. And the nice thing about that is if you have a lot of content, then you have this person that starts to acclimate and get familiar with
Right.
you and what you're presenting, and then the content continually improves over time.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the key to any of these contractors. Like the hardest part is once you find that person is then once they start to do enough of that, they start to learn your brand, right? I mean, and
Hmm.
that's really the key to, I think, well, especially for SEO kind of stuff is is that kind of stuff. What's your feeling on PBNs and stuff like that, where you're building those blog,
Uh,
you've heard those blog networks and things like that. Is that
yeah,
what's your feeling on that?
so I've never used them and I never will.
Okay.
And so for the listeners who don't know what a PBN, a private blog network, it's where you basically create a network of lots of different websites to try and fool Google into saying, wow, there's lots of websites that talk about you. And the reason why I've never got into them is, so I will give them credit and say that if done correctly, they can work. Now, the reason why I never got into them is just the logistics of it. You have to
Mm,
have, 100 different domains at
mm,
different registrars. So register one at GoDaddy, register one at, Network Solutions, and then so you got 100 domains, and then you got to go get 100 hosts. And so because
yeah,
you want them all on different servers, so you don't create a
right,
footprint, because if you have anything identifiable or in common between those, Google's going to see that pattern and then just nail you. And that's a huge amount of time to
right,
invest to just get punished.
right, right. Yeah, for sure. And is Google always continually updating with like I know that they always have different updates. Do they constantly keep updating their algorithms towards you know people that might be ranking well? One day, all of a sudden, the algorithms come through and crush you.
Yeah, I mean, there's two kind of algorithm updates if you just kind of summarize it. There's daily ones. They say that they run multiple algorithm updates a day, and then it seems like maybe every 6 weeks to 6 months, just a massive update comes out. And they
Yeah.
used to be really transparent, well, kind of transparent about it. And they'd say, hey, this algorithm update came out, and here's kind of where the path of what it's targeting. Or even if they didn't announce it, one of the big SEO media guys would say, hey, it looks like this is what that was targeting. Can you confirm? And then they'd usually say
Right.
yes or no. But now, the face of SEO through Google used to be Matt Cutts, and I want to say about
Right.
2 years ago he left, and now it's Danny Sullivan, which interestingly enough used to be a big SEO face. Like he was on the SEO guy's side,
Right.
and now he works for Google, and
Right.
he's a super smart guy. But a lot of people are jaded about that, and so now they'll say, Danny,
Right.
can you confirm this algorithm update? And he's like, no. And so everyone's like, you used to
All
be on
right.
our side. Why? So the transparency is not as there as much as it used to be, but yeah, algorithms are. I mean, it's a daily thing.
Right. So when you do content and you do publish it and everything, like how do you know that that piece of content is, working and it's working its way through the system and you're starting to see some value from the content that you created?
You kind of got to pivot. I mean, you got to look at
Mhm.
your analytics. Over time, you're going to have some pieces that are home runs and other pieces that are just kind of there.
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
and so you kind of go through and look at your statistics, and if a particular piece is getting more traction, then you can kind of dial it in a little more. Or if
Mhm.
one historically, once it gets a couple months behind it, if there's no traction, then you can just rewrite the whole thing. So you
Right.
got to kind of keep a pulse on it. There's not a specific. I mean, you can create a process for producing the content, but there's not really a
Right.
process for making home runs. Some work, some
Right.
don't, and you just kind
Right.
of got to modify it and watch it
Okay.
over time.
Right. So you'll go back. So if you created, say, 52 pieces of content, you might go back and redo 20% or 30% of it, rewrite it or something like that,
hmm
to get more value out of it. Is that kind of what happens with what you do?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It all. I mean, there's a couple different ways to measure it, and the success is going to vary by industry. Some industries it just boils down to hits. Other industries you can tie a piece of content to a visitor filling out a form, and so you can tie it
Hmm.
to a conversion. Others it might just be comments and interaction and engagement. So it's going to
Mm.
vary, but kind of along the same topic, what we're heavily considering now is even reducing the 52-week content calendar. So 52 weeks is
Mm.
one content piece a week. We're
Right.
considering quality is way more important than quantity. So
Okay.
once a week is kind of a happy medium where if you come up with a content calendar, you can produce a lot of content for quality, but as long as you front load the research, you can also have,
Mm,
quality and quantity. But what we're considering doing is pushing even heavier onto the quality side and just doing one or two pieces a month and just doing
mm,
really heavy research, data-driven, long-form content. Because, if you think about it, all the stuff that gets shared or the stuff that you actually sit down and read or makes an impact or you remember is that long
right,
stuff. You know?
right, right. So the long copy is still good these days. What I want to ask you is like, so what is long? Is that like 1,200 words, 1,500 words, 2,500 words? I mean, what is considered, where you're seeing better results these days?
Yeah, getting into the thousands.
Okay,
I'd say average is we always try to shoot for. I don't our copywriters and editors. I don't give them a word count because I'd rather focus on quality.
right,
But it
right.
seems like they all average around 500 to 1,000 words.
Hmm.
So when you get into doubling and tripling that, 2 to 3,000 words,
Hmm.
that's where you start seeing what the industry will refer to as evergreen content or the content that has more traction long term. So yeah, you got to
Right.
start hitting the 2 to 3,000 word mark.
2000. Okay. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Yeah. And then ranking wise, I mean, does it take like when you write something, like everybody's like, oh, it takes 6 months, 8 months, 10 months. Like where do you start to see, some sort of traction? Is it a 3 month period when you write something, 4 months, 6 months?
It'll vary by industry on that too. So what's interesting is we have a new client that does wholesale hats like baseball caps,
Mm.
and they have a brand new website. They just rebranded, changed company names, so no historical SEO value to work with. And we're only 6 weeks in, and they already got 4 page 1 rankings. So
Oh, wow.
every once in a while, I mean, it's gonna the level of competition kind of the amount of time SEO takes kind of boils down to three things. So the first thing is what is the industry and what are you selling or what's your product or service? Is it a
Right.
really niche widget or is it hyper competitive like weight loss?
Right.
Then the second thing is what's your target demographic or geographical area? Are you optimizing for a city, state, the country, international? And obviously, the bigger you get, the more you're competing against. And then the third thing is what backend does your website run on? Some
Right.
backends are much more search engine friendly than others. So, based on those three things, I tell my clients, mentally commit to a year. And it's
Okay.
not like a year later, all of a sudden this switch flips and you're ranking everywhere. But usually a year, and it'll vary by industry, is where the majority of your keywords start to tip in towards top rankings. So, some will be 6 months, some will be 18 months, but at a year is kind of where you start to average out some reasonable rankings.
Okay. Cool. And then I did want to ask you. So, so for example, like you had this hat company, right? Or let me take it one step back. Where people say SEO is kind of dead, everybody's using social media. Do you see that? I mean, it's still very important, I guess,
Mhm.
for SEO, for free traffic, I'm assuming, right? I mean, you don't see any sort of people still are still looking to do SEO, even though you hear the proponents saying SEO is dead.
Yeah, we had here, so I'm in Utah, and we had what's called the Utah DMC, a little digital marketing conference about a week ago. And Rand
Hmm.
Fishkin came out, who's like,
Yeah,
arguably the most recognizable face in SEO. And he had an
right,
interesting statistic, and I'll probably be off a little bit, but he had a chart where he had done some research, and it was even though 80% or 90% of online ad spend that is directly for paid advertising goes to PPC. The budget goes to paid forms of advertising, not SEO.
right.
Even though 80 to 90% goes there, it only drives 2% of search
Hmm.
engine clicks. And
Wow, okay.
so then you have on the flip side, organic drives 60%. And
Hmm.
there's like 40% was nothing. And what that means is somebody goes to a search engine, finds their answer, and doesn't click on anything.
Right,
So SEO
right.
still drives by far the majority. And then
Majority.
another interesting statistic he had was something like social media drives only 5% of conversions or commerce or
Mm,
actions where somebody goes to Google, Amazon, or Facebook with an intent to
mm,
complete an action, and social media
mm.
is only 5%. So
Wow.
yeah, now social media is awesome and it's got a huge space and it's growing exponentially. But if we're just doing black and white comparisons, then yeah, it's different levels.
Right. Right, right, right. Yeah, I guess you've got much more intent. I mean, I guess it's a buyer intent where they're looking and they're reading about something they want to investigate. Or they're going to buy a hat, or they're going to buy a new crescent wrench, or whatever. They're going to want to find a little deeper content. So I would assume, if you see a Facebook ad, it might not be that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So on budget wise, if you are having a budget and you've got your social and you've got your paid search and you want to do your SEO kind of stuff, like how would you split your budget up for SEO versus paid versus content, everything like that? Like in out of 100, where would you say with your clients, what should they sort of put aside?
Um, so you can do all of them, as long as all of them are running or driving a return, then you can do it. So it's not like zero sum where it's either SEO or
Right.
pay per click or social. But some clients, one of those channels don't make sense. I think from my position, one of the biggest considerations is what's your profit margin. So with pay per click, if you're selling a widget and retail can be hard on pay per click because you don't have a lot of profit margin. Um, same with SEO. We have I tend to not do a lot of retail clients unless they have a higher ticket item because
Hmm.
if our SEO is $2,000 a month, they got to sell a lot of stuff, a lot of those units, even to break even. So
Right.
it'll vary based on is it a product or a service, and what are your profit margins? Is it high ticket? But so there's not really an answer, I guess.
Right. Right. Cool. Awesome. Well, hey, then I don't want to keep you much longer. This has been really, really killer stuff. I do have a couple questions I do want to ask you before you go.
Sure.
I know you dropped some of the tools that you kind of use. Are there any other type of tools that you would say for people who are looking to do some of the SEO themselves that you would say to kind of use in their arsenal?
Another good free one is a website, GT Metrics, just the letter GT and then metrix.com. I like that one for page speed. It'll check your page speed and it'll tell you, what's slowing down your website. And the reason why that's important is Google says, treat us like a visitor, and visitors don't like slow websites, so neither do we. So improving your page speed can contribute to better rankings. I
Hmm.
actually prefer GT Metrics over Google's page speed tool because it's a
Okay.
little more specific as to what your problems are. So that's a
Hmm.
good one. As far as an auditing suite to track your rankings or to check the structure of your website, there's a program that I use called Link Assistant, and it has 3 or 4 different tools that you can buy individually or as a group. But Link Assistant's kind of my go-to as an auditor.
Okay, cool. Awesome. That's great. There is one question in the group that somebody wants to ask, and that's basically, is it a waste of money to boost your post on Instagram? Will you have higher value by selling products, by writing one article a week?
So social media advertising isn't my area of expertise, but
Right.
based, I dabble in all the different forms of online marketing, but SEO is by far my thing. But so
Right.
taking my advice with a grain of salt, kind of the common trend is it depends. There's
Right.
what are you pushing? Is it a product or service, and what is your profit margins? So the thing with social media advertising,
Right.
including Facebook, I've got a lot into Facebook advertising lately, is you have to know who you're targeting. So usually just boosting, not necessarily, because you don't, I mean, just kind of generally promotes the content. So your paid ads, where you go in and specify your target demographic and their interests, you're going to get a much better return than just a general boost. Now comparing that to one article per week with SEO, if you're going to get into SEO, it's like all or nothing because it's such a slow, long process. If you're just going to do an article here and there, then don't even bother starting. So unless you're going to do an article every week, repurpose it into other content, do press releases, and make the effort, then don't even start.
Cool. Awesome. Awesome. So, all right. Well, so when you're not dominating the world, where can people bump into you at?
SEOnational.com is my agency, and I've started to experiment with podcasting worlds as well. So just last week I launched learningfromothers.com. That's been really fun because I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of high-profile entrepreneurs over the years, and so it's really cool to bring those guys in and be real candid and talk to those guys. And waystorank.com/Facebook is a Facebook group I started recently where I share these kind of tips freely with other entrepreneurs.
Awesome. Cool. Oh, great. Well, I really appreciate the time. It was killer stuff. I mean, you guys, there was so much knowledge dropped on this thing. It was awesome. So you know where to find it. I'll put it in the show notes as well. And then, Damon, you're gonna put that link of that to that blog, to the what was it, the
template,
to the content calendar thing as well.
Yeah, I'll go grab what I'll do. I'll load two things. One is the template to kind of organize your topics, and then we have this little PDF that we've created that'll kind of help get your wheels turning on what to write about.
Awesome. Cool. Well, great. I appreciate the time, and let's do this again.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me.